Hello and welcome to this fourth video in the series, An Introduction to Music Theory. In this video we're going to look at the beginnings of the concept of intervals. We're going to do that by way of looking at two particular intervals that exist in music, those being a tone and a semitone. The tone and the semitone are basically fundamental to forming any other interval or the relationship between two notes in terms of pitch. So for example, whilst this is not an example of a tone or a semitone, I'm just going to show you what I mean. If I have these two notes here, I can say that there is an interval between those two pitches. So we're not going to look at that today, but I just wanted to use that to explain what we're basically talking about. We're talking about the distance between two particular pitches. Okay, so let's delete those. And we'll go back to having a look at the keyboard down the bottom here. We're going to have a look at middle C. And if we take middle C and say, let's move to the next note higher than middle C, what we've been doing so far is we've been moving up the alphabet from a C to a D, or travelling through the white notes, C up to D. You may have noticed though that there is a black note that exists between the C and the D. We haven't looked at the black note so far, apart from the fact that we've discussed it forms the basis of this repeating pattern that exists on the keyboard, 2 black, 3 black, 2 black, 3 black, and so on. But there is a black note that exists between this note C and this note D. That note represents the shortest distance that I can travel from the C up the keyboard. If I go from here to here, that black note is the next highest pitch, higher than C. If I go one more, then I arrive at the D. So when we've been talking about moving up the keyboard so far, we've been talking about moving up or down in relation to the white keys. If we bring the black keys into the equation, we have other routes that we can travel through the keyboard. So this note here, which is a white note, and C, we move up to this note here, which is referred to as C sharp. We're going to come back to talk about sharps and flats later in tonalities and keys, but for the moment, just know that that's called a C sharp. So C to C sharp. The distance between those two notes is known as a semitone, and the semitone is the smallest distance that you can move up or down in pitch on the piano keyboard. If we were to move down a semitone, C, you notice we don't have a black note, so we move straight to the next white note, which is the B in this case. So from this C, our semitone up takes us to a black note, but from this C, our semitone down takes us to a white note. So it doesn't always follow that from a white note, if you move up a semitone, you will hit a black note. You won't. This note here, for example, is an E. If I move up a semitone, I'll hit F. If I combine two of those semitones together, I get what's called a tone. And that kind of makes sense because semi commonly refers to as half, as in semicircle. So a semitone is half a tone. So if I put two semitones together, I end up with a tone. So the distance between this note, which is the C, and this note, the D, is actually a tone because it takes two semitones to get there. If I go down from the C, the note that is a tone below the C is actually this note here. And as you see, I've had to travel two semitones to get there, so that's a tone apart. So from a white note, you can travel a semitone and arrive at a black note or a white note. From a white note you can travel a tone and arrive on a white note or a black note. From a black note you can never travel a semitone and hit another black note because there is always a white note in between. Every single black note has at least one white note in between. And from a black note we could travel up a tone, so two semitones gets us to this note, which is a white note, or we could travel from a black note, two semitones gets us to another black note. Okay, so that's essentially all there is to it really in terms of tones and semitones. They just describe very, very small movements in pitch. As I say, the semitone is the closest note higher or the closest note lower than a particular pitch, and a tone is simply when we join two of those together. So here, up to the D is a tone, here, down to this black note is a tone. Okay, so that's pretty much it. As I say, this video was going to be very short and sweet. In the next video I'm going to get into the concept of tonality and key, and we're going to look at some extended intervals as a result of that. But the next session is really about how we kind of harmonically organize music. I haven't really described what harmony is so far, but harmony is a fundamental underpinning of all music that we play and listen to, or certainly in 99.9% of the case. So in the next video we'll come back and have a look at that. Thanks for listening and watching. Any comments or questions, please put them in the comments section below, and I'll get back to those as soon as I can. Okay, thanks again.